Saw that Michael Simon's restaurant in Detroit abruptly closed. It's called Roast. When I was still doing a morning show in Detroit, anytime I would go in for appearances, the station would always put me up at the Westin if I was going in to do the show for Tigers opening day or, a festival or something that we were doing. They would put me up at the Westin downtown, and this restaurant called Roast was a Michael Simon joint right downtown Detroit. I couldn't believe it stayed open as long as it did. And I'm sure the pandemic didn't help either. But it always surprises me when these restaurants will just abruptly close. Just tell their employees, tonight's your last night.
Yeah, we done.
We're done. Not a note going, hey guys, FYI, make other start looking for other gigs. Because the people who, now again, I don't know how involved Michael Simon is with this restaurant. He might just be licensing his name to it. He might not even be in the mix anymore. But anytime, restaurants do that, it's always very strange to me. Because you think you'd want to, most people work in the service industry. I think they're lucky if they're only working one of those jobs. And so if you lose one of them, and like Roast wasn't like a diner, it was like a nice place. I ate there a couple of times because I was staying in the hotel.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just kind of how businesses go out of business. I don't think a lot of them plan on it. So
no, but
on the rare occasion when you can go, hey, we're going to be closing at the end of the month. That's not how most of them run it up to a red line and go, okay, we can't do this anymore.
Right, but
and it's not like they do that in this business where they're like, okay, we're going to go in a different direction, but we're going to let you kind of run out the clock on your contract.
Well, no, but they don't shut the radio station down.
Right, but they shut the performer down.
Right, but it's not like they fired a person. They shut the restaurant down and go, you guys are all done. You know when your restaurant is headed towards the cliff. Like, when it's not going, especially in pandemic.
Right, but it's the people that have to make the decision aren't usually the ones that are in the day-to-day. So when they go, especially in a place like that where there's probably all these different investors and stuff like that, and they have to go, okay, now we're going to just shut it down. And they, it's like tearing off a Band-Aid.
Yeah, I guess before COVID, they did pretty well. I mean, they were right downtown. The steaks were good, but, they shut you down for a while. Or I don't know who knows, but it's not the first time that a restaurant has done that. It won't be the last. But, I don't know.
Well, it's a bummer for all those people that are out of work.
Yeah.
First time that's happened in Detroit, too.
Listen, Detroit, Michigan has seen its share of problems, but it's still it's a lovely city. I'm a big fan of Detroit. And but Roast is no more. If you're familiar with that restaurant at all, or maybe you'd stayed in that hotel.
Should have advertised with Cramblin and Duvet.
Cramblin and Duvet, sure. And Duvet. Yeah, they could have.
If you want your advertisements to get out to the right people, that's who you hire in Detroit.
That's right. When his dad was running it, they would have had.
Oh, they've been. Those were special times.
Those were very, very special times. That's right. Did those kids from Mexico ever make it back? By the way, all those Instagram douchebags that were on that plane from Canada, and they were posting photos, or too dumb to not post photos of themselves.
What happened? I don't even know.
So a couple of weeks ago, these kids from Quebec go to Mexico from Canada, and they all get COVID. They're on a plane, not wearing masks or whatever, and they're filming it and blah, blah, blah. So they post all this because they're all wannabe influencers or whatever. I think a couple of them might have been legit, but this was a chartered plane from Montreal to Mexico, and they're posting these videos of them, and they couldn't get a Canadian airline to fly them back. There was no airline that would fly them back because of COVID protocols in Canada.
Liability, yeah.
And they were stuck in Cancun. And so all these people that are like, well, I can't pay to stay in Cancun. They're like, well, then I guess you shouldn't have posted video of you guys. What do you want from it? If you had done this quietly, but that's not what you do when you're an influencer. You don't do anything quietly. You do it loudly.
But even if they did it quietly, they still can't afford to be there.
No, but
if they didn't brag about having COVID.
I don't even know if they were. I don't even know if they were bragging about having COVID.
Undermining authority on the plane.
Gotcha.
Like the stewardess or the flight attendants, whatever you want to call them, were telling them like, "Hey, please put up your mask. Please, you can't smoke on a plane. Can you please?"
Well, they weren't. It wasn't a chartered. It was a chartered flight, so it wasn't like they were flying commercial. But
still, you're not allowed to smoke on a plane. I don't care if it's private or not. And
they were trying to get a Canadian airline to fly them back. I never knew how that worked. The story was big for a couple days. I wasn't sure. I assume they made it back.
They were on there hitting the pin, crowd surfing, Bill.
Yeah.
They were crowd surfing on the plane. Yes, it was that many people on there.
It seemed like a bunch of kids or college kids who had like pooled all their money to finally get a private plane to Mexico. And one of the students, 19-year-old Rebecca St. Pierre, said she feels abandoned and has no idea how she'll pay for her hotel room as her stay is extended indefinitely. Again, this was a week ago. I was just curious if they
take the ferry to Isla.
Got them back, but they could not get back home to Canada. All the flights have been canceled, she said. The organizer of the trip left, she said. So,
bye.
One girl said she won the trip in a contest on Instagram. Had never previously heard of the person behind it. He just said he was an influencer. And it turned out to be very expensive for people who thought that they were getting something free. There was no social distancing, she said. I think people were doing drugs. You think?
Probably.
Right. And some people were putting Vaseline up their noses in an attempt to thwart the positive COVID test. So they knew what they were doing. They were doing the Vaseline trick.
Does that work?
Yeah, Vaseline's like they call it a barrier cream. So like for people who like, maybe your corn shoots bleed and you put some Vaseline on there, In this case, they were trying to hide the fact that they were just trying to travel with COVID and be douchebags. And the guy who apparently, because they had to dig into all this, the guy who had organized the event has already been like convicted of financial crimes in Canada.
That's always shocking.
Yeah, he changes legal name to avoid prosecution.
The Canadian Firefest guy.
What was that
dude's name?
But the Billy Bartley or whatever his name was, I don't know. But he's in prison in Ohio somewhere, isn't he? If he's still in there, he's probably out by now. But yeah, the two of the girls on the flight they talked to were studying to become pilots. So, but I guess they hadn't studied enough to actually fly them out of there. Yeah.
See, that's
the girl on Yellow Jackets.
That is my worst fear, especially traveling with a bunch of white people and me being.
You have a lot of worst fears.
No, I think I've talked about
that's anxiety.
Yeah, I guess my worst fear is.
You know how Mary has multiple best friends?
Yeah.
You have
multiple worst fears.
Multiple worst fears.
Well, I just feel like being stranded is one of the worst things. Like, I'm afraid to fly alone for this specific reason. I don't want someone else to ruin it for me or me be mistaken as someone else. I need someone to vouch for me. That's why whenever I travel, I try to please these white people as best I can. I don't make a fuss. I'm cool with doing anything because I need someone to tell them, like, if I get stuck at the border, bitch, I am not Mexican. These are my friends. If I get stuck on a plane.
Wait. You're throwing a lot into the mix here. Why are you worried about being stuck by You don't need someone to vouch for you.
Well,
you had gotten separated, when we all went to Jamaica, if you had gotten separated from us, you would have made it back to the United States.
How do you know that?
It would be your fault if you didn't. What, were you just going to stand there with your pants around your ankles? And, well, you know what I mean? Like
with the coffee I put in his
bag. You're not helpless. You're a grown man. I mean, you would have to explain some things to some people, but you would find a way to get back to the United States. What do you mean you need people to vouch for you?
I like traveling with people because that adds to, me traveling by myself adds to the travel anxiety because you don't know what could happen. I could lose my passport. Why
would you lose your passport?
Because stuff happens. Life happens.
He's just always thinking of worst case scenarios. So if he has somebody there with him,
we can navigate got somebody to calm me down
to lean on to get through a situation.
But if you lose,
he doesn't want to handle anything on his own as an adult.
But my point is, if you lost your passport, no one vouching for you would fix that situation. You would still need a passport. They wouldn't go, oh, no, he's cool. He can go to the United States.
Nah, I am cool. Let me
Nevertheless, but my point is, if you lost your passport, that's not a situation that another person can fix for you. Unless it's the American embassy in Mexico City.
But I'm just saying, it's not really about that. It's about having somebody there to calm him down.
Yeah,
But that's silly. Why you don't need
He's
that?
a silly person.
Right, but
it's a rational.
I'm just saying that
worst fear.
you're having so much less fun than you could be by going. My worst fear is being stranded with no one to vouch for. No, stop.
He can't.
But I don't feel
because
like
he won't.
He can. But those are two very different things.
But he can't because he won't take the steps. It takes Poundcake a lot, and this is me defending you right now.
I just want Poundcake. I want Poundcake to enjoy his life.
I want him to too.
But I don't think it's a bad thing to not travel by myself
with somebody else. Yeah,
I don't think that's such a bad thing.
But the reasons you don't like to travel by yourself are not positive. Those things aren't helping you. If we were to put you on a plane and said to the pilot, "Where's this plane going?" And the guy goes, "I don't know." I go, "Okay, 19A, Poundcake, back there and have a seat." And this thing landed in Denmark, right? Mm-hmm. You'd figure out a way to get back to the United States.
Well, I'd sit there and cry first. And someone would walk past and be like, "What's wrong with you?"
You wouldn't cry. I don't think he would.
I'd be overwhelmed. I cried at my steering wheel because my car broke down. What you talk about?
See, and this is, to me, this is why I'm so vexed so frequently about Poundcake. Because by his own description, right, it has not been a piece of cake to grow up being Cody Brown, right? Black, but not black enough for the black kids, right? Mm-hmm. Half white, but not white enough for the white kids, right? Yeah. Gay, the whole bit. And if you got
not gay enough for the gay kids.
You've done a lot of things on your own, and you've surmounted a lot of obstacles. But if you were by yourself on a plane, you'd cry until somebody said,
I think because
"Where are you going, little boy?"
It made me on the fringes of life. So I'm already close to the edge. Don't push me.
I'm close to the edge. All right. Well, then yes, do not travel by yourself.
I could if I have to, but I'd never have had to, so I don't feel like there's no need to push it. I know.
By the way, none of these people are by themselves. These French kids in Mexico, they were all in this huge group. They were worried about how am I going to pay for this.
Yeah, and I was worried about that too.
They got a free trip.
If I got COVID and I had to stay, it wasn't until I got there that I realized that they pay for the resort if you get COVID down there. So I was like, oh, well, in that case, I don't care.
Do they really?
Get some COVID.
If you get it down there, probably. Yeah. Like if you catch COVID on their resort.
But they can't prove that you got it from their resort.
Say, I bet
you have to have a negative test to travel there, don't you? I know to go to Hawaii, you do.
To get out of the country, they don't care. America does not care if you travel out of the country.
I'm saying the resort doesn't require you to have a negative test to come there.
I did not get tested to go to Mexico. I got tested to come back to the United States. That's the only reason why Mexico cares, is because they know they're going to lose a lot of American tourists.
I cannot imagine that a resort would pay for you to stay there if you got a positive COVID test.
They probably have a whole COVID wing.
But they would look for any reason to not take responsibility for that. They could be like, did you leave? Did
you snort your Vaseline like we told you to?
Did you leave the resort, sir? Yes. Well,
sorry. They might do that. Or, see, that's why I thought is the day you check in, you get a test. No. And if you're negative the day you check in, then you must have caught it there.
I don't think they're doing that kind of diligence. No. I mean, you tell me. They're not giving you tests when you get there,
No,
right?
I got to tell.
As long as you show them a negative, or, they're like, come on in, spend some money.
That's not how it was. If you were vaxxed, you could get tested the day before you leave. If you were unvaccinated, you had to arrange it 2 or 3 days before you left. And I imagine, I don't know this for a fact because no one I went with tested negative, but I'm sure they give you like the cheapest test positive or the cheapest test possible. So it's like, all right, if it's even a shred of negative, you're fine.
Like shred of negative. I don't think that's how it works.
She's partially pregnant.
It's mostly negative.
It's mostly that, like, because I'm
a faint line.
See how faint that second line is.
They said they would call you if you have it, and no one got a call. So I never got to see my test. I never looked at my tube and say, "Oh, yep, I have COVID." It wasn't one of those at-home tests. They test the blood or whatever. Or I forget how they did it. But at any rate,
they drew blood from you.
No, they did. I forget how they tested me, but.
Your nose, right?
Yes,
with a rubber hose.
Yeah, they did it on my nose. And then they were like, we'll call you guys. No one got a call. So we don't know. They tested us, but we don't know for sure. They're like, we don't want to pay for these dudes. So no.
There's a comedian.
All this to go to Isla Mujeres and party it up and not have sex with a girl like he promised us he was going to.
He doesn't care about the show.
We feel left out and let down. We feel stranded, Poundcake.
Yeah.
By your inability.
If anybody should be crying about being abandoned, it's us.
Yes.
You let
Cody.
us all down.
Let us all down because you couldn't close with a drunk
didn't
heterosexual
even
broad.
open.
Didn't even try.
You didn't even open.
There is a comedian friend of mine who was on a British cruise line where they had a COVID outbreak where a bunch of people got COVID. So everyone had to stay like in their cabins and stuff. And he tested negative, and then on the ship, to get on the ship, he tested negative. And then I guess like a couple days into it, they retested him, told him he was positive, and was like, you have to stay in your cabin. He's like, oh, I'm supposed to get off the ship in a couple days. They're like, you're not going anywhere. So he's like, what, are you just going to take me back to England? And so he was like, real upset, and he's calling this onboard doctor and yada yada yada. And finally, after like 2 or 3 days of being isolated in his cabin, the onboard medical staff was like, oh yeah, you are negative. They must have read the wrong person's results for you. So he was like cooped up in his thing, missed show dates because they told him he was positive.
They gave him a false positive.
And no, it was the wrong guy.
Not even the right person.
It was a different dude that they were like, oh, you had the same first name, last initial. And so he didn't even have COVID.
First name, last initial.
Yeah.
We thought you were the same guy. I mean, how many John R's could there be, sir?
Right.
On a thing.
Yeah, he was not happy about that.
What amazing in an age of unregulated data, and you're just awash in information. They go, oh, we just looked at the first name and the last initial. Really sorry. That's why they thought I was a car thief in the state of Massachusetts. For
But that
a hot
was at
minute.
least the whole name, right?
No, it was they didn't check the social security numbers.
Security
yeah,
number, yeah.
We just saw the name and the birth date or something, and I was like, okay, sure. That's precisely. I guess these kids are back in Canada, and the guy who was organizing the thing is blaming everybody else.
Well, yeah, that's what you do. Right?
Or take responsibility for it. And go, okay, yeah, I mean,
That's not you.
I'm crazy over here. So the Public Health Agency now of Canada is following up on all these suspected fraudulent cases and whatever. But yeah, they were posting videos. Hey, we're headed to Mexico.
When you had COVID, did you get the letter from the Ohio government? I got mine after I was
No.
already out of quarantine. Oh, you guys did at-home test, didn't
Yeah.
you? You didn't do... So I got like a PCR test through a hospital. So I was already done with my 10-day quarantine. And
I'm
out.
like, how did they know I was positive?
Right, well, I was already out and back in the world. And then like 3 days after that, so this is like 15 days, more than 2 weeks after I tested positive, I got a letter in the mail from like the Ohio Health Department that was like, hey, you have COVID, make sure you stay home. And I was like, what? This is like
Johnny on the spot here.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so, okay, so in what scenario is this helpful? I mean, everybody knows the protocol. And if you went into a doctor to get the test, they would tell you what to do.
Yes.
Like, I didn't understand who that letter was for.
Right.
Because if you test positive, your doctor has to call you and be like, hey, you tested positive, stay home.
Bureaucracy.
And then once 2 weeks later, you're like, hey, by the way, we know you're sick.
Listen, bro.
Please don't kiss people.
Hope you're feeling better. And you're only contagious for the first couple days anyway.
Yeah.
By the time you're at the end of your quarantine or whatever, you're not passing it to anyone.
Right.
It's only those first few days.
It just
so.
made me laugh that it was so late. And then I was just very confused about who that letter is for.
Yeah.
Because who doesn't know those things? Who doesn't know to stay home? Who doesn't know? Or whose doctor didn't tell them that?
Dear Mary, we understand that you have COVID.
Had
COVID. If you are still alive, please quarantine for the next 10. No, make that 5 days. We're changing this a lot.
Unless you work in the service industry, then get back to work.
Yeah.
That's right. I was reading about one guy who said that a side effect of him having COVID was it made his penis shrink. Oh. That's pretty genius. Yeah. Oh, my God, is that it? Oh, I had COVID. It's a COVID penis. You haven't heard about that?
Yeah, come on.
This was huge before I got sick. Oh, I'm so sorry.
That
Hopefully
was my
it'll-
plan to get people to take it more serious.
Yeah,
Remember?
that was.
You get COVID, it makes
Yep,
it smaller.
that's right.
And
Bill
there you
Squire
go.
was, if you'll pardon the pun, way ahead of the curve on this. He was trying to get the word out there that this could happen. I've got a break here. If you were trying to get yourself tickets for a Cleveland Monsters game, you are in luck. I'll have a pair for you after the break. They are playing the Wilkes-Barre Penguins on Saturday the 29th, which is also Cleveland Rocks Night. They're handing out Dave Grohl bobbleheads to the first 10,000 fans in attendance. And then another chance to grab some money, $1,000. Next keyword for you to go fund yourself is coming up at 3:30.